Trina Solar has been at the forefront of smart solar energy solutions, driving the transformation towards a net zero future with groundbreaking innovations since 1997. Join us at All Energy Australia at the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre from October 29 to 30 and visit Trina Solar to explore the latest in solar and energy storage innovations. Trina Solar, smart energy, powering a net zero future. Welcome to Solar Insiders, a podcast reporting on the people, technologies and policies shaping the world's biggest energy source. Presented by Sophie Vorath, the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid, and Rachel Williamson, senior reporter at Renew Economy. Solar Insiders is brought to you by Pylon, the essential solar design tool to grow your solar business with quick and effortless proposals that will impress your customers. And Fronius, trusted worldwide for delivering reliable, smarter energy solutions.
Hello, you are listening to Solar Insiders. Now, you might have picked up on the fact that I am neither Sophie Vorath nor am I Rachel Williamson. My name is Tanya Shukla and I am the producer of Solar Insiders, Energy Insiders, and the Driven podcast. In today's episode, I wanted to run back a conversation that Sophie had with Kait Williamson, Head of Community and Stakeholder Engagement at Flow Power, because it's an important conversation on how alternative retailers are focusing on working with communities. Getting people involved in the renewable energy transition is really important. And in this conversation, you're going to hear Sophie and Kait talk about how Kait, through Flow Power, is able to do so in these smaller communities. There won't be any news of the week, but in a fortnight's time, Sophie and Rachel will be back to normal programming. Till then, here's the conversation.
Kait Williamson, welcome to Solar Insiders.
Thanks so much for having me, Sophie.
Now, we've got you here because you are very much involved at the Newstead Community Energy Project, which properly launched last year with the backing of Flow Power. And, well, led by Flow Power, I should say. And it's been a really interesting project, one of the really early community energy projects. Newstead's been a real centre of renewables and setting an example for a lot of other communities. We've followed it a lot on Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid, but I think we've got you here to give us an update on how it's all going since the launch and, maybe starting with a bit of an origin story of how it all started, because it's been a journey.
Yeah, that sounds great. The Newstead Community Energy Project is such a special project. It was led by Renewable Newstead, which is a committee of local residents, and these local residents are incredibly ambitious and consistent in their vision to kind of take the dream that they originally had and bring it into reality. And that aim was to generate renewable energy locally and to decrease their carbon footprint. So that's
whereabouts is Newstead?
Newstead. It's just a couple of hours outside of Melbourne in regional Victoria. So this community, super special in the way that they sort of initiated and kickstarted this project, which I think it was first conceived back in 2008, which is, I think, a testament to, how much time, work, dedication and energy, it takes to bring something, fully from an idea, all the way through to completion.
And the motivation behind it, was it mainly environmentally focused, or was this we want to have better control of our power and a more sort of reliable supply?
Yeah, I think probably a bit of both. And I think in terms of generating their own energy locally, I think that was a key focus for them. And reducing the carbon footprint was also a focus. But additionally, kind of taking, as we kind of see today is a big topic lately, taking the power into their own hands of, where their energy is coming from. How their community can have access to that as well.
And where did Flow Power come into the equation?
Yeah, good question. So in 2019, I'll probably start just giving another shout out to Renewable Newstead. They did so much work to secure a $1.1 million grant from the Victorian state government, which was a great kickstart and catalyst to then being able to search for an appropriate partner. So in around 2021, they did, I think it was a national search, and after that, Renewable Newstead engaged Flow Power after having, multiple discussions, obviously, and doing their research on who they think would be best to partner with on this sort of project. So we sort of, I think, formally engaged around 2021.
And that was more of about how do we make this work, as far as liaising with the distribution network, making sure people get the benefits of the power and so on.
Yeah, I think like community energy, it kind of takes on a mix of different models and a mix of different elements, in different communities. And for Newstead, I think what it meant for them is that they were interested in sort of getting things moving, but then they wanted a partner to assist in, delivering the project and then operating the project, afterwards as well.
Because it's very complex, isn't it? I mean, there's the part that where you're sort of financing and installing the hardware, the solar panels and the battery storage, but then all the other bits connecting to the grid and running it are pretty complicated for the most sort of experienced and dedicated people.
Oh, definitely. And it's, taking so much time and effort to go through, the process since ideation in 2008, it kind of makes sense for a community to, maybe want to, in some instances, find a partner, that it can build, own, and operate, the energy project moving forward, because then that sort of takes the risk out of it for the community as well.
And for Flow, is that, an easy investment, or is that sort of do we have to weigh it up, and is it I mean, it's not necessarily a no-brainer investment, is it?
No, yeah, I think the power in this project is that there were multiple stakeholders that came to the table, to really make this project work for all parties involved, and that includes the community, of course, and the dedication they had, but also the government, and the funds that they were able to grant and provide, and then Flow Power, as both a retailer, but and an energy developer as well. So I think that's where you see multiple parties working together, for this optimal outcome, and I think that's a really good example of the power of that.
And so when we say that the Newstead Community Energy Project launched last year, what was it when it launched? What with solar storage, how many people involved? Can you give us a bit more of that detail?
Yeah, sure. So last year in 2024, the site was officially opened after construction and installation, and so the generating capacity is 3 megawatt hour.
And that's a solar.
Yeah, that's the solar farm. And then the battery, there's a battery on it as well, which is 5 megawatt hour. So, and that amount, while it's sort of a modest project, it more than surpasses the amount that Newstead would need as a community.
Okay, and so the power is for the entire town. Is that the way it works, or is it do people have to sign up?
Yeah, so there's two sort of elements of Flow Power's business model, one as the retailer and one as the developer. And so the way that it works is that the solar farm and battery basically can offload to local network, and the battery allows for this to be done at different times of the day depending on demand as well, which also puts pressure on the wholesale price when we're able to load shift when that energy is required or being used. And so part of it goes back to the local network. And then to kind of close out that circle as a retailer, we are able to offer have a sort of special offering for the Newstead community, and they can then they make their own decision on whether they would like to sign up to our residential product or not. But yeah, then the residents can then have their energy if they choose to go with Flow Home and have their renewable energy essentially from the local network, which is pretty cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And has the buy-in been good?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have over 75 signups in the community so far, and I think we're really excited and motivated by that number. And yeah, I think Renewable Newstead as a company has also been really supportive, in the offering that we're able to work with them and assist them as well in setting things up for individuals in the community. So, and also small businesses. So it's not just residential. We also, sell the energy to, sort of small businesses or commercial clients additionally. And I think one thing that's good to note is that for every kilowatt that's used in the community, we send the equivalent amount back to the grid. So yeah, it's a very interesting sort of symbiotic relationship that we've created between their use and the network as well.
So as far as, with this 75 people that have signed up, are you expecting that to continue to grow and is there a plan to then also maybe grow the system?
So I guess the short answer is that there's no plans to make this specific site any bigger, but we definitely would consider, maybe replicating something like this, in another area or in other communities. And in terms of the numbers that you asked, in terms of growing that, yes, certainly we definitely hope to grow those numbers. And our residential team definitely is very much in touch with the community members there. And so, yeah, keeping that open relationship, I think, with the community is something that I think Flow Power and also me individually, I really value driving those relationships from a consistency perspective and also from, just an authentic place of, what the community members need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine this kind of data, if you want to give it such a sort of cold name, is like gold for a lot of energy companies out there at the moment who, because there's so much change going on and there's so much, the relationship between retailers and customers is really changing very quickly. And knowing how to manage these and how to connect with customers and to not drive them off, basically off the grid is going to be really important. Knowing what they want and, what level of buy-in and how simple they want these products to be and that kind of thing, really, really important. And, I think out in the regions, this kind of work is even more important because there's this whole narrative about large-scale renewals and the heavy lifting regions are doing for that. I know out Newstead Way there's been some conflict over transmission work and wind farms as well. So yeah, this is a really good way to connect people with the renewable energy transition at the very base level. And it's not going to solve the problems of social license for large scale projects, but it is a way of making people feel like they're a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think also we aim to just think strategically as well about the impact that sort of community benefits as well have in certain areas. I think we very much, Flow Power takes a place-based approach, towards our community engagement, both the actual engagements themselves, but also the benefits, that are sort of created in these areas. And I think really listening to what's needed in specific communities or what community groups have to say is so critical in understanding what's actually needed. And obviously with Newstead, they're such an ambitious group, who kind of knew what they wanted, and so the offerings, that we have for that community were sort of born out of, listening to what they wanted to be a part of, and what they wanted for their community, as a part of the project.
Given they were so proactive and such a big part of this project, what will be your approach? Because you mentioned that, you have ambitions to replicate this in other communities. Are you talking about other communities that are also have their own interests, or are you hoping to be able to now, with your learnings, go into communities and say, look, this is what we could do. Is anyone interested?
Yeah, I think, look, we're probably very flexible on what the model should be like and happy to explore similar models, but maybe different avenues as well. So certainly we would want to do more community projects maybe that are in the same vein, but it might not look exactly the same, as it does in Newstead, as it might in another community. And I think from our perspective, we would maybe aim to do something that's maybe progressive or something that hasn't been done before, as well, because I think this is also how the Newstead project sort of was born as well for Flow. It was something we wanted to try to do, something that hadn't necessarily been done before, which was building a solar farm or energy project that then has direct benefits back to the community. So I can't speak for other companies necessarily, but I know that the model can be sort of flexible but somewhat replicable in various communities. So I think if there's appetite in communities, surely we'd be open to that discussion. And it also depends on what the community is after in terms of what they want their benefits to be as well.
Yeah. And does it necessarily have to take as long as it's taken? Obviously, they started so way back in the early 2000s, which would have be part of the reason. But I presume that with the work that you've all done, that some streamlines have been found, and that it wouldn't necessarily take 15 years
Yeah.
anymore.
Actually, I'm not sure exactly how long it might take for some of these projects, but I still would say it would take a fair bit of time, from ideation through to completion, because there's so much work, I think, that certain maybe community groups might have to do to understand their motivation or viability for doing something like this. Like, it's pretty amazing that the Newstead community is so connected on their motivation and ambition to see this through like a vision. It's pretty incredible. So I think there definitely would still be a long lead time for something like this, depending on what type of community or what type of vision that community has for a project like this. But certainly, yes, there's probably some learnings, of course, that we could take through to operational phase of a project like this. And one thing I think, speaking for myself, I think from the perspective of what could be changed, I think funding, that's made more available as well by governments, to get things kickstarted is also super important and like a critical step to seeing these types of projects come to fruition, or at least get going, in the first instance.
Yeah. And there's broader benefits to it all too, isn't there? I mean, there's also a lot of talk about grid resilience out in the regions, and also about making better use of the distribution network. So sort of not putting so much emphasis on the transmission and big, huge projects that need, new poles and wires to connect them and all of that kind of thing. So this is another selling point, I suppose, of these kind of projects, is that they can bolster grids in that parts of the grid where maybe the power supply can be a bit iffy. They can also, work with distribution companies to shore up parts of the grid where they need to be shored up and that kind of thing. So, is that something that governments should be paying more attention to?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something to note in terms of demonstrating like decentralized energy. So at Flow, we have like a lot of small projects that have, DC coupled battery systems to support the grid. And I think some of these smaller projects, where their power is also that they, support the grid, but also they fit beautifully into existing infrastructure, right? So there's no upgrades, or, you don't have to build extra power lines, and they can kind of go up relatively quickly in terms of timelines in terms of like in relation to the general timelines for an energy project. So I think these types of projects can be a little bit more nimble in terms of how they're built, the support they provide, and then plugging into existing infrastructure, which, again, I think is a good news story for lots of people when they hear that there's no real upgrade to the power lines, that's required, or no power lines that have to be built in the process of something like this.
And no sort of huge bit of infrastructure that everyone has to agree on and
yes,
negotiate over. And I think, as you were saying before, bringing the communities in and actually having a benefit that is tangible for them, I think is another big deal, because a lot of these are really big projects. It's like, well, this is power for the city and this is power, for the, the broader grid that just kind of goes into the whole mix. Whereas when you have a project like this, you can see some of the benefits more locally. And, in that sense, it makes more sense to people. If they're part of it, then they're not going to feel as much angst, you would presume, against it and feel sort of left out, which I can imagine a lot of people would do.
Definitely. I think, we also still, throughout the operational phase of the project, want to be a good and active member of the community. And I think that long-term relationship building with the people who have kickstarted and initiated and led this type of project is also super important, and coming from that authentic place, I think, allows for us to also build on additional community benefits, perhaps, and keep that open relationship and keep talking about maybe what's needed in the areas we work. So certainly very important.
Yeah. And what are Flo's ambitions in this space, generally speaking? Is this really a core part of the business for you guys?
I think we definitely have a track record in sort of community energy projects. And I think we do that because it's sort of aligned with our own ethos, but we also see it that's very aligned with some of the customers we work with, because, like I said, there's a retail side of the business, where we're selling renewable energy packages, residential products in Victoria as a start, but, mainly also commercial and industrial clients. And some of our clients also are keen to push things forward in community energy, which I think is a really awesome thing to see from that perspective too. And so we definitely have done a couple projects that have tried to demonstrate what's possible, Newstead being one of them. But maybe another one that's actually worth noting is our Shoalhaven project, and that's the first one where there was a community group that wanted to see a solar farm realized. And so we helped to establish sort of a community fund that allowed local community to invest in the project. And that sends benefits back to those community members. But then City of Sydney, for example, off takes, a lot of that energy. So I think that's also an important thing to note, is that, there are also other models, in different sort of mechanisms that can be explored. But it's great to see, that we're very invested in sort of community energy, but also our clients are also invested in community energy and want to see how that can benefit where they're receiving their renewable energy from.
And this is the beautiful thing about distributed solar and storage, is that, and other technologies too, that they can be, so bespoke. They can be cater to needs of different people and do what different people need and different communities need. And that's something that we should definitely be making more use of, I think, rather than it's now, we can stop thinking of there being one energy solution for everyone and start thinking about, well, what works best here and what do these people want?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a bit earlier, but I think personally I've witnessed sort of the cost of living or, rising energy prices are a big concern for a lot of people right now. And I was recently in a couple of different communities, and that was the main topic of conversation, if I'm honest. So I've seen this sort of I've witnessed sort of an increase in this discussion over time, and I think people are wondering, okay, how can I take sort of some of this outcome perhaps into my own hands or our own hands, from a local community perspective. And I think that's a really important thing to touch on.
It is, and it's really nice to see too that it does extend beyond people. And I don't mean but just investing in rooftop solar and maybe battery storage for themselves. It's nice to see this community approach, which is also another thing that we all talk about, is not leaving anyone behind and equity and that kind of thing, because not everybody can invest in rooftop solar and storage. So it's great to see that, while I'm sure a lot of the Newstead households do have solar, it's great to see that it's thinking beyond that. It's thinking, well, as a community, how can we also make it better for everyone and lower prices for everyone?
100%. I think that's a really, really important point because, there's also, it's access, but there's also transparency. So I think those two things go hand in hand in terms of access. At Newstead, for example, if you have sort of our residential product, regardless of whether you're a renter or a, homeowner, you have access, to competitive prices, for the residential package or product, that you've purchased.
Yeah, and you can have that feeling that you're using solar on a sunny day.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't, I think, maybe that sort of closes any socioeconomic, gap that might be apparent, in other areas of the energy sector. And I think there's the transparency thing I also think goes hand in hand with this, because at Newstead, the sort of the tools that we have that we also try to provide to our customers, we sort of want to just show people what's possible with households when they're actually empowered to take control of their usage. And I know that transparency has been sort of a large topic of conversation as well. There's been a lot of news articles and just voices that talk about that the energy market lacks transparency. So I think when you're doing community energy, there's also a real opportunity there, for open discussion and conversation, and people, asking, how much is, something producing, or, what is this? How do I, maybe if I shift my usage from here to here, how is it going to impact my prices? And so I think, those are all really, really good discussions to have.
Absolutely, and so empowering, because that you're exactly right. And I think that's going to be a big issue with this sort of focus on VPPs and on the one hand, all of this technology and change is really good news for consumers, but it's also still way too complex and way too opaque. And if you can start a conversation and have a retailer who's really open to discussing all of this stuff, and to so that people in the community can even have conversations about it and share little bits of knowledge, it's fantastic, and it needs to be a lot more of that.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I was going to wind up by asking, how does I detect an American accent? How does somebody who I assumed is from the US wind up working for a retailer in Australia with a wonderful community focus and getting up projects in regional Victoria?
Yeah, great question. You detected correctly. I am from the US, and it's a very interesting story. I've been in Australia for about 9.5 years, and career-wise, I'd say I started in sort of the international development and social impact space. And after working in that space, I worked in a bit of consulting, moved to Australia, and I actually worked as well for an oil and gas company previously, which was where my energy experience sort of started. But through sort of a passion for, a greener world and renewables and how we can make this work for us in Australia, being so abundant in sunshine, for one. I was really interested in sort of fusing the two, being in energy and renewables, but then also this sort of social impact space. And so for me, that's sort of how I wound up in this role, which I think very much focuses on how can we bring positive social license, social impact, community benefits to the areas in which we work. But, also bringing renewable energy to the forefront.
Yeah, well, we are very grateful to have your skills and your passion here, Kate. You can stay here as far as I'm concerned. And to Flow Power as well. And we'll have to have sort of regular check-ins, I think, to see how you guys are going and what else is being developed and how Shoalhaven and Newstead are progressing. So I think they're really, really interesting projects, and as you say, they are getting some really important data and interaction with people who are really super important to this whole transition. So yes, thank you so much for your time today, and we will speak to you sometime in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Bye now.
Solar Insiders was brought to you by Fronius. From powerful solar inverters and intelligent EV charging to the new Fronius Reserva solar battery, Fronius offers a proven ecosystem that empowers homes and businesses to take charge of their clean energy future. Solar Insiders was also brought to you by Pylon. Pylon provides easy-to-use solar design software for solar installers and retailers, with pay-as-you-go pricing, no monthly costs and no lock-in contracts. Join Australia's top solar companies who trust Pylon to design high-resolution, CEC-ready solar proposals.